Hello, everyone. Uh, Thank you so much once again for joining Ukrainian Spaces. We're happy to be back. Valeria, привіт.
Hey, I'm so sorry I'm a little bit delayed. Was running, but I'm here now. How are you?
Слава Україні.
Героям слава. I feel particularly proud of saying it this week. I know there's been a lot of losses as well, but a lot of wins for Ukraine, so...
Yeah, I have this kind of character that it prevents me to celebrate much. I feel like I will have the opportunity and the right to celebrate when this genocide is over and when we meet in Yalta and Luhansk and then we celebrate the fuck of it. But at the moment, it's just I feel like I know that from some people it's great to celebrate, but for me it contributes to these extreme emotional ups and downs. So for me it's like, okay, yeah, I appreciate it, and it's great for, of course, the people who were liberated after 6 months of this genocidal fascism. But we also remember the price that we keep paying with so many lives lost, bring that victory and bring that liberation to Kharkiv.
Yeah, I think the bottom line is if Russia didn't invade, none of this would have happened. And this is exactly why we're here, because Russia didn't invade just in a vacuum, but it invaded as a sort of a result as well of a lot of centuries of colonial rule and colonial practice and rhetoric and everything around that. And so we here try to talk about that and make sure that everyone in the world knows about the fact that there's a long history of kind of domination and colonization within our region as well, that it's not confined to only certain countries in the world, and Russia is not separate to what is happening. Why don't we jump straight into Maksym? I'll give you the honors of introducing our guest and jumping straight into that conversation.
Yes, Anka, can you unmute yourself, please?
Hi, I just did.
Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава.
We were so excited about this conversation, and we were trying to make it happen for a long time. We have a golden rule for Ukrainian Spaces, despite that I have like tons and tons of fangirling about you I wouldn't like to share. But we have a golden rule that our featured Ukrainians introduce themselves all the time. So could you please do that and tell everyone else who you are, what you do, and maybe a bit how your life has changed in the last 6 months since the genocide started?
Absolutely. But before I even get there, I just want to say thank you both for creating this space. I mentioned it to you earlier that I just had no idea how much I needed to hear other Ukrainians from basically all walks of life, not just kind of like one stereotypical, representative of Ukrainianness, but all kinds of Ukrainians from all over the world. You're like doing God's work right here. It's every time I listen to the podcast, I just feel like so held and heard. And I literally just like speak out loud, like, yes, oh yeah, like it feels so good to hear yourself represented in all these different facets of being Ukrainian. That said, my name is Anka Lavriv. I was born in Bila Tserkva in Ukraine. I moved to the US when I was 19. I moved on the wonderful program called Work and Travel, which I believe still exists. And it's kind of a miracle because I have so many stories of like how just horrible and dangerous this program is. But yeah, we won't get there. It got me to move to the US. And my journey as an immigrant was a pretty sad and long one. But honestly, what, in context of what's happening right now, I'm starting to understand what the purpose was behind all the turmoil and hardship. And as for so many of us, I got to see myself in a different light. And, my personal awakening as a Ukrainian started about 5 years ago. And of course, this year escalated it so much. My whole family, they right now, my mom, my 10-year-old nephew, my sister, and my dad, they are in Germany with some family. My parents are getting ready to go back to Ukraine. And half of my family is back home, my grandmother, my brother-in-law, my cousins. So it's, as it's been said so many times, every single person who is Ukrainian or of Ukrainian descent has been touched by this tragedy in one way or another. I don't think there's anyone who has not experienced some kind of heartbreak or loss this year. And I feel like all of us got to experience ourselves in a very, very different light. It's one of those things where you truly get tested by something like this. Most people can't think of anything more horrific than a war. I remember growing up, and my grandmother, who was born in World War II, said, nothing really matters. The only thing that truly matters that there's war. Like, other problems can be solved. But the war is the one problem that, is unsolvable in a way.
Yeah, in a way that even if it ends, the collective trauma, the collective baggage, this is a mark for our generation, for sure, for the end, until we live.
Yeah, and for generations to come. Yeah. But, I kind of went on a tangent. I am a tattoo artist. I am a visual artist. I am a sobriety advocate for people who suffer with addiction. I think these things would be like the three big ones that define me. I don't really like to be defined, but I will use these. And of course, I'm a Ukrainian. And I feel like it's been really interesting connecting with other Ukrainians abroad and getting to hear everyone's story, because it's a really interesting space to be, where you aren't really considered to be Ukrainian anymore by a lot of Ukrainians, and it's so heartbreaking. And you're not really considered to be, wherever you currently living. And I just really wanted to, kind of like center this in our conversation, because I feel like it can be applied to both points that I would love to talk about. Is, the aftermath of colonization by Soviet Union for people, as for example, how I saw it in my parents, and also the experience of an Ukrainian immigrant or immigrant in general. I feel like the thing that connects these two for me is like a loss of soul, and then the journey to, to truly find who you are in a circumstance where, things aren't very defined. It's kind of a path that you have to carve for yourself. My parents were both artists. My dad's a musician. My mom was a visual artist. We had a lot of our own problems, because I feel like I was born in 86, 2 months after Chernobyl exploded in an affected zone. It's just, life was very hard.
Oh, you're 86 baby. The same as
Yeah,
like me.
you
Yeah,
too,
I was
right?
just born
Yeah.
2 months before and you're 2 months after.
Yeah. So
I,
it was just
sorry, go ahead.
survival mode. It was like a true survival mode. It was one thing after another. And you know, I talked to my parents, like we didn't have that kind of like warm and fuzzy connection, but I really appreciated that, you know, they were like very alternative even for like the, you know, their kind of situation. But I felt like, I remember my mom told me once that she just always felt like she had to repress her truth, and she had to like parrot these like "I love Lenin, I love Stalin," where she never had any connection. She never believed in this. She would, you know, both of my parents were not fans of Soviet Union. My father is from Western Ukraine, from Ivano-Frankivsk region, and his, you know, his whole family was basically killed, sent to Siberia for being opposed to Soviet Union. So yeah, they were not delusional in that way.
Yeah, it's almost, I think, as I correctly remember, especially for those of our listeners who do not know, when Russia reoccupied and colonized Western Ukraine, I think they sent over 250,000 people deported to Siberia in several years, and it's on top of those millions they killed before.
Saying that I was forced to speak things that were untrue to me personally, like they didn't align with my personal truth, and that really, really resonated with me. And I always just felt like, you know, our generation, we definitely experience stuff like this. For example, you know, with the language, I remember speaking Ukrainian as growing up, because my dad was like pretty adamant about, you know, like we have to speak Ukrainian. My grandmother spoke Ukrainian, you know, just like exclusively. And then going to school and kids being like, ew, like saluchka, you know, like being like, you're a village person, you're like a peasant, like the
For
cool people
speaking
speak
Ukrainian, right?
Russian.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
stereotypes that we keep
yeah,
mentioning here all over and over again.
yeah. And of course, I was like, you know, I don't want to be ostracized. Like, it's easier for me to just like blend in and fit in. And I remember experiencing this and just feeling so sad because, you know, of course now I'm analyzing it and I can put two and two together, but I feel like that was the first time when I like viscerally felt that feeling of you know, not being aligned with your truth and like bending over to fit into societal norms. And it didn't feel good to me. And little by little, I feel like my resentment just like grew. I just didn't understand the place where I was living. I I really aligned with like Lesia Ukrainka, Lisova Pisnya was my favorite book. My mom sent it to me and it has like my childhood drawings all over it. I was just like walking around with it. It introduced me to folk magic, which is still a really, really huge part of my life.
Which we'll ask you about shortly a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. But I, you know, my sister and I used to go koladuvali. You know, my grandmother taught us all these traditional folk songs. I played bandura in music school. So that felt real to me, you know, that felt very true. And then as I became a teenager and started, you know, being embarrassed of these things and trying to fit in, my resentment just grew bigger and bigger. And I just decided for myself that this was not my place and I had to leave and I had to find something else. And yeah, and then, you know, being a person in immigration, experiencing immigration, it was just the same heartbreak over and over and over, of just feeling like I just don't belong anywhere. For example, when I moved to Brooklyn, I was like, oh, I'm gonna go to Brighton Beach. And oh my God, was that an experience? It was, you know, immigrants from mostly Soviet Union and their children, and they would literally say like, oh, are you from Russia? And I would be like, no, I actually never been to Russia. And it was just like, well, it's all the same thing, you know. So for me, it was just like, I have to leave. I tried to connect with the Ukrainian community that's like more in Manhattan and upstate New York, but I also did not fit in there because it was very like family traditional values oriented, and as a person who's like bi and not super into like, you know, traditional family structures, I just didn't feel the connection. So I was just like, all right, I'm gonna try to make it happen with like the artist crowd in New York. And I feel like that was kind of the most connection I felt. But I tried to assimilate so hard. But obviously, you know, people would hear my accent and right away ask, where are you from? And for a while then, it was just like so frustrating, because I just didn't want to explain over and over and over that Ukraine is not in Russia. Ukraine is not a part of Russia. You know, it was just like, well, it's kind of the same thing.
Can I ask you a follow up here? Was it a bit also part of a shame in it? Because like I'm extrapolating, because for me not discussing my Ukrainian identity when I became a migrant was linked to that, because for me it was something I was ashamed of, maybe not a lot.
Maybe
Yeah.
not a
Oh,
lot.
absolutely. Yeah. You know, because the stereotypical image, especially in the US, is, you know, thanks to all the movies, is like a really angry person in shapka ushanka with a bottle of vodka, you know, very backwards and just grim. So yeah, of course I really did not want to be associated with the stereotype.
Yeah. And you know,
Yeah.
it's also like, I totally relate. I think like this thing that you're talking about, it's such a under kind of noticed thing about feeling like you're not fully there when you're in Ukraine. You're not fully like, you know, you feel a certain way, and then you're, as an immigrant, you feel similarly but differently in a different location. And then it's like
Yeah.
what Maxim said as well, trying to, I mean, for me, it was exactly that. It was like trying to hide my identity almost, because for me, it was always, I just didn't want to have that conversation about like, oh, so you're, so where are you from? Like Ukraine. Oh, so that's close to Russia. Well, yeah,
Yeah.
but you know, I just didn't want to even go there, which is why for such a long time I like did everything possible to like not look Eastern European, not sound Eastern European, not, you know, just fully push away my identity. But I wanted to ask you, and it's totally fine if it hasn't, because I think all of us have different experiences of what has happened since February 24th. But has any of that changed at all for you? And I know you spoke a little bit about finding people who are similar to you, like people who are living abroad who are Ukrainian. But has any of that experience of being an immigrant, a Ukrainian immigrant abroad, changed for you since February 24th, since the world sort of woke up to how cool Ukraine and Ukrainians are?
Yes, and there was like a really kind of long lead up to that. I think for me, things started turning. I ended up living in the US undocumented for about 9 years, and it was like a really grueling experience, and I couldn't see my family for 10 years. They couldn't come see me. And finally, when I was able to come back to Ukraine, I just felt how different things were. And it was just, you know, it was like such a huge, monumental difference between when I left and when I came back 10 years later. And it really made me feel very, very different about how I viewed Ukraine. And I really started diving deep into the folklore, into the, Ukrainian magic and Ukrainian symbolism. My grandmother is a huge influence on me. I call her a witch, but she would be very upset if if I said it to her face. But she is an herbalist. She's like a very spiritual person. She's like a very animistic person. She just talks to everything around her. She's so connected to nature.
You're basically describing all our grandmothers.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. She had like a column in a local newspaper about holistic healing and healing with plants. But I'm not gonna go on too much of a tangent. Let me bridge what I was trying to say. But yeah, that was the beginning of this journey to me of reclaiming my Ukrainianness. And the more I started learning about the soul of our nation, our folk traditions, and just even remembering them, and like really reliving of how it felt to do traditional stuff, to sing traditional songs. My husband bought me a bandura, so I've been relearning how to play. I started putting these like online classes together with this incredible platform called Sea Grape Apothecary, which is run by a Georgian immigrant, Maria. And she was so encouraging. She was like, why don't you teach Ukrainian magic here? So we've been collaborating on these classes for about 4 years. And I just keep falling more and more and more in love with our beautiful traditions. And throughout this time, particularly since the invasion, I have never been more proud to be Ukrainian. The work that volunteers are doing, the work that every single one of us, no matter where we are, is doing right now is beyond inspiring. And it let me, I'm a person of action. Like, it makes me really, really upset when there's nothing I can contribute to. And I've been using my art prints for like 6 months now. I've had this sale running, and I was able to raise over $30,000 and send it to Ukrainian volunteers, which feels, I'm not like, I don't want to say it as like a braggy way, but
I can tell you that's amazing, not braggy. Totally.
It's so important to me to see that support behind me. It hasn't happened in a vacuum. There were people who were buying this physical product that's like, it's just like pieces of my soul that I've been sending out in exchange of this, this like money energy that I can contribute to. Like, to me, that is magic, that is that this is like a real witchcraft.
Can I ask you a quick follow-up here? Because we touched this topic several times in Ukrainian Spaces, and actually we had a fantastic episode together with Tetiana Bedford. She's with us here. Denford, sorry, she's with us, and we discussed how generally witchcraft is so embedded within the Ukrainian culture, how to the point that these days we even use it to kind of scare Russians away. There are many viral videos of Russian soldiers being threatened that Ukrainian witches will cast a spell on you, and whatever will happen, horrible things, and they really believe in it. Not that it's not true, but also it's a good reminder of a bulk of our culture, and there's so many research interesting research and stories about it. The bulk of our culture related to this female empowerment culture's been erased by Russian colonialism for centuries, and this is the part of the history of female empowerment that was systemically destroyed by Russian colonialism when it comes to Ukraine. But for you, like when you exploring it in your art, and I mean, you're a fantastic artist. You're also a very popular artist. I mean, I pinned a tweet with anyone who is not aware about your art. Please check Anka's Instagram, because this is just visually stunning. But when you kind of try to incorporate in your art, why you think it's important to do? Why you think it's important to keep visualizing? Why it's important for the rest of the world to learn more about it? What do you find it for yourself there?
Yeah, that's a great question. I love this question, because as a person who's 100% visual, for me, it's like so much easier to interpret information via images, because I'm like a very, very emotional person. And I feel like I can grasp, when it's information that's relayed by, by a story, or just like oral, kind of like, like a either on paper or oral. I can definitely grasp kind of like the gist of it, but for me, I truly understand like where the person's how the person's emotional state was, and like kind of like maybe sounds a little over the top, but I feel like I understand the person's souls a little better when I see an image that they created. And for me personally, the way that I think we should all really elevate folk art is because it's the art that bypasses intellectualization. It's the kind of art that just tells you about the person's like emotional landscape and the person's inner landscape. And I don't know, I just feel like I get a glimpse of a person's soul when I see certain images, especially the images, for example, created by Ukrainian folk artists like Maria Primachenko. She's a genius. It's just so difficult to create these images that are, again, so true and so aligned with person's soul, without trying to impress anyone, without intellectualizing it, without I just don't respond to art that someone has to explain to me what it means. I'm just like, okay. I have no emotional response to it. But for me personally, I never really create my art from a place of trying to like tell a story. I mostly use, these like female beast protagonists to again convey my emotional state. And I think there is like sadness to my art, but also like a very like an armed sadness. It's like these female spirits that I would say were greatly influenced by specifically Lisova Pisnya, the Song of the Forest by Lesia Ukrainka. And if you haven't read it, like, what are you even doing? Like, you have to read it if you're Ukrainian. And I feel like this book in particular really affected me as an artist. And also the book that I had these like beautiful like lithographic, I think that's what it's called, illustration to it. And I feel like it's honestly single-handedly affected and inspired my whole aesthetic. And yeah, sorry if it didn't make much sense, but
no, it did, of course. No, thank you so much.
It did so much. Yeah, it did so much sense. I kind of a bit hesitant to talk about it as a guy, because I feel like Ukrainian women have so much ownership over it. And not that there are no male, what do you call them? Warla? Yeah, Molfari. Yeah. Oh, by the way, regarding Molfari, I have with us Tatiana, and she's part of Ukrainian Spaces family. I pinned her fantastic thread from a while ago on Ukrainian witches and why it's important for Ukrainian culture, and she had a fantastic question for you as well. Tatiana, before you go, wanted to remind everyone else that Ukrainian Spaces is 100% sponsored, listener sponsored. So if you want to also have an opportunity of being in front row and ask our featured Ukrainians any questions, please become our Patreon sponsors, join our Patreon family, and then you can ask questions directly during broadcast, or leave them in the comments on our Patreon page, and we will ask them for you.
Today, there's an absolutely overwhelming amount of patrons and people who support us at our spaces. So Anka, thank you for bringing all these people together. I see Maggie, who just got us our NAFO membership, Nat, Stas, Oleg, and Maria, who was with us for a long time, but I think now as well is back to listen. But Tatiana, please go ahead. We couldn't have asked this question without you. You came up with it, and Maksym and I said we can only do you justice if you ask it yourself.
Oh, дякую. Hi, Anka.
Hi.
It's nice to speak to you, actually, not really in person, but we've always had little chats in our DMs, so it's nice to see you on here. I'm so excited about this topic. So you were talking about Molfari. And it's funny, my whole life, my grandmother and my mother in particular, we are all, when you say vidma, it's funny, it's been so kind of, it's a word that's been turned around. And actually, we are, mipsi hutsule, like we're hutsul. So I was going to ask you, because a molfar is a person that has magical abilities and can heal people with herbalism and folk magic. I don't know if you know that you may have read it or seen it. There's a book by Mikhailo Kochubinsky called Shadows of Forgotten Ancestors.
Yeah, we had to read it in school.
See, right? Okay, good. Yeah. So, and it popularizes this. So, like, have you always considered yourself part of the Molfari? Do you feel like your ink and like the designs that you do and your beliefs help tell a story, not only about Ukraine, but for people who need to feel like, to believe in a kind of power and magic within themselves, because you do it for you. So I'm imagining that might affect like how you empower people when you do your art or sell your art or draw on them.
Thank you for this question. It's really awesome. No, I have not. I went through a really kind of like really long and hard journey of finding myself and finding my voice. I always knew that there was something there that was like worth expressing, but I just I feel like I just had these layers and layers of social conditioning to shake off before I could really tune into my own voice. And I think being in New York was very, very helpful for me to kind of like find these people who would help me get on this journey and truly find myself. And I could see examples of incredible artists, just kind of burning their lives down for this specific thing of just like connecting with themselves and getting rid of everything they own, everything they identify with, just to reconnect with their true voice. So for me, it was a really long journey. I struggled with addiction, and I just feel like it was like a very very strange experience for me, because again, I just felt like there was so many things imposed on my identity that I couldn't hear myself. I couldn't see myself for who I was. It was just too much distraction. And when I started reconnecting with myself is when I got sober, and I truly saw myself for the mess I was, and how confused I was, and how I didn't know who I was, and I didn't really know my soul. And it took a while to rebuild, piece by piece, this like bridge with my, higher self. And I'm still working on it. I can't say that I'm like some realized person, especially since the invasion. I feel like a lot of us thought that, wow, I really got to the place of love and light. And then all of a sudden you're like watching that Telegram channel where there's like Russian soldiers are dead, and you're like, getting joy out of it, which is a truly scary thing to experience. And, being able to witness that about yourself, like, wow, I'm capable of such hatred. So it means that there's still a lot of work to do. But yeah, it wasn't like an immediate connection. I feel like I could hear my true voice somewhere, like strangled under all the layers of these false narratives. And it really helped me, not lose that thread. But I can't say that it was like a natural thing for me.
No, but to that point, do you find that all of us, I think, individually are in the process of kind of rebuilding ourselves and our Ukrainianness, suddenly, and I wonder, do you turn to that, magic, that morfari, that kind of healing, that art? Do you find that that's your anchor now? Are you grateful that you have that because it's kind of really teaching you who you are?
Yeah, it's been a huge part. It just feels healing. It feels like coming home. I'm right now putting together a class for the Sea Grape Apothecary in November on Ukrainian protective magic. And, just like gathering all this information about various traditions from various regions of Ukraine, it really feels so healing. And, it makes me feel inspired to how can we use these traditions, and maybe, there's obviously some stuff that's very outdated, and it doesn't apply to our modern lifestyle. For example, a lot of Ukrainian folk magic is about marriage and love, and like all of that stuff is great, but for a lot of people there's they have other aspirations, and they would like to use magic in different kind of like different angles and different just corners of their lives. So I feel like it's so important for us as younger people to carry these traditions and maybe adapt them. And I don't think anything in life or magic is rigid, and it has to be this way. It's kind of like cooking. It's you take a recipe and you make it your own, and that's the beauty of it. I don't believe in rigidity. I believe in our free will. That's why I don't really believe in hexing anyone, because that will always bite you on the butt.
But in a way, we promised everyone else that we will cast a spell to kill, but I think we've already done it. I mean, in a way, Anka, I so love your story because I think 100% it resonates with everyone else here who is in Ukraine, outside Ukraine, and maybe other non-Ukrainians who also have migrant backgrounds. In a way that's so powerful that you didn't have to come home to return home, and you have returned home in the last 6 months, powerfully reclaiming something that was stolen from you, that you were conditioned to be ashamed of it, and you reclaimed it in a powerful way, and you found your way home. And I think eventually, like in my head, that's the baddest, the most kick-ass spell against colonialism you can possibly find.
And it's so funny, like you said that, I'm sorry. It's really interesting that it's like a pattern in my life. Like, for example, choosing tattooing as a profession where there's no defined path. You kind of like, you maybe get an apprenticeship or you maybe teach yourself. Like every single person has like a different story because there's no school to go to, get an education as a tattoo artist. Every single person has their own path to get to where they are. And I feel like this is very similar to me being a tattoo artist. It's just kind of like, well, you just jump in a deep end of the pool and find your way back to the shore.
Yeah, for sure. And the other thing I think when you were saying as well about like, before and after and the last 6 months versus life before that, I think one of the things that we've been talking about at Ukrainian Spaces for such a long time as well with other people who have joined us is that we've all realized that there's like a diversity in our experiences of being Ukrainian. Like there's no one way of being Ukrainian. There's 3 million different ways. And, each one is just as valid as the other one. And I think that's what's, I think probably, we had a time capsule episode where we left wishes for the next 6 months. And I if I went back to it, I would say now your conversation with you has really like made me think that actually we really realize that there's no one way of being Ukrainian wherever we are, whoever we are, but there's like 3 million different ways and we're all moved by different things. And it's just such a beautiful thing to see kind of really rise to the forefront. But I wanted to ask you I know we only have a couple of minutes, 10 minutes left, so we still have some time. But I wanted to ask you, because our audiences as well, I know there's some very, very audiences that know a lot about this topic that are here today. I can see them. A lot of people have been listening for us for a while, but a lot of people who join to also educate themselves a little bit about Ukraine, for people who might not know necessarily the same stuff we do, the stuff that comes, that we naturally know just by virtue of being Ukrainian. But for those who know nothing about Ukraine, what do you think would be like your top 2 favorite things about like witchcraft and mysticism, Ukrainian witchcraft and mysticism you'd like people to know?
Oh my God, so many, but I guess I'll do 2.
You can do 3. You can do 3.
Just the way how everything is so visually stunning. You don't have to like guess or explain or intellectualize it. You have these like incredible palette of colors, the symbols, even if you just take like traditional embroidery. To me, traditional embroidery is absolutely magic. And, it's really funny because I have seen some pushback, and, it's a completely valid point, to my classes and classes that other people teach who take it through like a magical lens. And people who are skeptics, and they say like these symbols don't mean anything. It's just just kind of like a visual thing, just like an embellishment. It has no meaning, and whoever claims that it has meaning is insane. And I get the point. I respect everyone's beliefs. I respect people who are completely secular. I respect people who believe in higher power and spirituality. But I truly think that it's like meaning is whatever the person makes of it. And if believing that these symbols mean certain things and will bring magic into their home, into their clothing, what's so bad about that? So back to the topic. Yeah, just the being stunning visually. Ukrainian magical traditions are sometimes so twisted and interesting that you just think like, wow, how did people even come up with it? And the last thing that I will bring up is using folk song as a huge part of magic. For example, if traditionally women are doing divination around New Year and Christmas, they always used to sing songs. And I feel like it's that human breath that breathes power and enlivens whatever craft or divination that they're doing. And to me, again, tying it back with speaking your own truth, I feel like the flow of energy that our breath and traditional song brings to work like this, it just connects us with our ancestors, connects us with our language, our culture. So I love that a lot of times in Ukrainian magic, the song is also present.
I don't know about you, but I'm running to buy Lisova Pisnya again.
I am the biggest Lisova Pisnya advertiser in the world.
We will, in one of our upcoming episodes, we will have fantastic Ukrainian publishers talking about how we basically can bring that fantastic Ukrainian publishing and the books, and Ukrainian books are often a piece of art on their own, how we can bring it to the outside world. And I think this is related to literature and sharing it with the world as well. Anka, we're running out of time, and but we want to ask you our favorite question on Ukrainian identity. And I know basically you've already shared so much, but if you had to just explain it for a total stranger, what being Ukrainian means for you now after these 6 months of the genocide, and how exactly has it changed in any way? What would you say?
Being Ukrainian to me means maybe having fear, but finding the way to contribute to your country in the way that you have ability to. I think that it, to me, became one of the most important things, and especially living in the US, where everyone is just like always, talking about the government and how the government sucks. And just, there's a ton of incredible activists in the US, of course, but just like the general idea is just like there's a government and there's us. And seeing Ukrainians actively partaking, taking part of their future and contributing to the well-being of their country is very inspiring for me to see. And also, to me, being Ukrainian is expressing myself fearlessly, colorfully, just not having fear of self-expression, and just like moving that energy of, not being bottled up with someone else's ideas about myself.
Wow. Yeah. I thank you so much for sharing. I also feel like for the rest of the world, this might be the most important story to get inspired and to remember, is that we often talk elsewhere, especially in the countries where everything is all right and there is a privilege of comfort, that the government is this, the army is that, but that story of incredible Ukrainian resistance is happening not because of the government or the army. It is happening because of the people. And we, in the army, on the front lines, we have regular people from all across the country, from any kind of background imaginable, just enlisting and going and fight. And the same is happening behind the front lines on the volunteering. Everyone, there is no professional volunteering. Everybody contributes. So we stand because of the people. We stand because we are the country. We are the democracy. And this is resistance, in the finest hour of, democracy, and it shows why democracies matter.
And just the last thing I want to say super quick is I appreciate your podcast so much, because we as Ukrainians get to see ourselves, mirrored back to us. And I hope that with our collective soul awakening through this horrible fire experience, we stopped minimizing ourselves or comparing ourselves, or seeking validation from Westerners and Western countries, because we have our own thing, and it's beautiful and it's inspiring, and we just should just shake that off. We're not lesser than anyone.
100%. And thank you so much for sharing that as well. And we're so honored to have you with us. And as you can see, so many people have joined us today. Very happy to see people as well who are joining us not for the first time here with us, because I think it's so nice, as you said, to see this sort of community build around some of these principles that actually not Maksym and I have been bringing to the forefront through this podcast, but actually all of the people who have joined us over the past 6 months, and including yourself and Tatiana and Stas and Oleg.
And including our growing Patreon family. And for everybody else, we were promising you to expand, to become better and bigger. And this is exactly what Ukrainian Spaces is doing. We're launching soon a content hub where we will help to create and sponsor stories that educate the people about Russian colonialism in indigenous languages. This is something we will share more details in coming days, but this is extremely exciting for us to grow as a project and to help to bring Russian colonialism down together with our partners, not only in Ukraine, but globally, and especially in former Russian colonies. But a special thank you for our Patreon sponsors as well. This broadcast and podcast exists thanks to your support. And if the rest of you, you're not our sponsor, not part of our Patreon family, but you love this episode, please join our Patreon sponsorship and help us to amplify more Ukrainian voices, amplify more diverse Ukrainian voices, and decolonize some of the Ukrainian conversations online. And this is a live broadcast because we love the messiness of it and the unfilteredness of it, but it's been automatically recorded and later it's going to be uploaded as a podcast. So if you listen to this as a podcast, you can please share and most importantly rate and comment after this, because it helps us to keep trending on podcast platforms. And we've already entered top 100 in dozens of countries, and in a couple of countries we're even top 5. So this is thanks to you and thanks to your listening, but also commenting and rating. This is all. Apart from one thing, is Slava Ukraini.
Thank you. See you next
Bye, guys.
time.
Thank you.